Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to NoDQ&A video right here on NoDQ.com, the YouTube channel, and NoDQ&A videos affiliate, ringsidenews.com. Got your questions here via spring.me/AaronRift. So let's get started with the first one from Craig Humpage1. Hey Aaron, now that Stephanie has called Kane a bastard on Raw, wait for it, will you admit that the Attitude Era is returning? You know my answer to this one by now.
No.
Now, on to the serious questions, at least I think so, from Panthers fan 0189. Roman Reigns said ass. Is the Attitude Era coming back? Ha ha ha, just kidding. Seriously though, I was expecting Cesaro to become IC champ. What would they possibly have planned for him now? Answer in video, please. Well, it looks like in the immediate future, Cesaro is planned to be facing Jack Swagger at Extreme Rules. That was what I was initially expecting following WrestleMania, and then once they announced the IC title tournament, I figured, okay, that this is a vehicle to get Cesaro over, have him win the title, and go from there. But now it looks like it's going in a different direction. Cesaro's out, and I don't necessarily see this as a bad thing. The IC title used to have a lot of value. It used to mean something, but nowadays it really doesn't. And I think that in some ways, if you're holding the IC title, it labels you as a mid-carder. And I think that Cesaro might be bigger than the IC title at this point. And if anything, him being the champion could keep him down. So in a way, I'm glad that he didn't win the tournament. And he has Paul Heyman by his side. That is going to help him a lot. Not a big fan of the music, by the way, with the Perry Saturn knockoff siren at the beginning, but, you know, maybe they'll change that. They can work on that. I think Cesaro already has something with Paul Heyman. He doesn't necessarily need to be IC champion. Somebody like Wade Barrett could benefit from holding the IC title. So, you know, I don't really have a big problem with it. And I figured that you should at least finish off the Cesaro and Jack Swagger feud, and then let that have a conclusion. So, you know, I'm not really dwelling on the whole thing that much. All right, this one comes from Dave451985. Do you think since Cesaro is a Paul Heyman guy that we will ever get to see him face Brock Lesnar? If so, when? Because I think they both have an amazing match with the strength of both of them. I think that if Cesaro gets over to the degree that WWE is hoping over the next year, definitely we could see Cesaro versus Brock Lesnar. It seems like an obvious choice of a match. The fact that they're both Paul Heyman guys and Cesaro can stand up to Paul Heyman and then Brock Lesnar can come to Paul Heyman's aid. You could definitely do that match. I just think it's a matter of getting Cesaro to that level where you want to put him in there with Brock Lesnar, because as we all know, Brock Lesnar is working a limited schedule, and WWE is only putting him in matches with top-tier talent. I mean, this is the guy that beat the streak. He conquered the streak, as Paul Heyman said about 1,000 times on Raw. So you got to put somebody in there who is at Brock Lesnar's level. And Cesaro, a lot of fans feel he is on his way to getting there. So we'll see what happens. Don't see it happening until next year at the earliest. Maybe WrestleMania 31. If Cesaro is over enough at that point, you could do that match. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I think that there's a good possibility that we will see that match at some point. And even WWE.com on their website did a little predictions thing for WrestleMania 31, and they threw it out there. So it's definitely on the WWE radar. All right, this one comes from Creature13. And his question is, do you think that the attack on Daniel Bryan by Kane could have been a last-minute change because of the death of Daniel Bryan's dad? Yeah, I think that initially Daniel Bryan was going to be part of Raw next week going into Extreme Rules, and because of the unfortunate circumstance of his father passing away, you know, they want to give him the time off so he can mourn and he can just recuperate. And they did that angle on Raw to temporarily write him out of the storyline until Extreme Rules. You could tell watching Raw. I mean, it was very depressing to see him out there. He clearly was not in the right frame of mind. And I felt that they had to do this angle and give him the time off and just let him recover from that. and let him come back at Extreme Rules. And as it turns out, I thought that it was a really strong angle to get Kane over as a monster again and do something dastardly to Daniel Bryan to build up Kane as a challenger. So in a way, it worked out for the storyline. And I got this question here from MayuMan123. Hey, Aaron, don't you think the opening segment with Daniel Bryan and Kane was a bit over-dramatic, or too over-dramatic? I think that it was just right. I think that obviously Daniel Bryan took a huge beating at WrestleMania. He took the powerbomb into an RKO through the table. He took all that physical punishment from Triple H, and he was on Raw the next night, almost fine and dandy. He showed very little signs of injury. So they had to do something to convince fans that he's going to be gone next week. He's going to have a significant injury. So you had to do something where Kane really took him out. So I think it was fine. I think you had him get 3 tombstone pile drivers, 1 on the floor, 1 on the steps, 1 on the announce table. And, I think that was satisfying, and it's convincing that, he might not be on Raw next week because of that beating. So I think it was done very well by WWE. All right, this one comes from TMNT Brownie 33. Hey Aaron, great work. What did you think of the Shield's promo this past Raw? It was good, but it felt too scripted for me. How much of it do you think was their own stuff or creative? I'm guessing that most of it was written for them, as we've seen through recent Raw scripts, and one just leaked last week, and there was another Raw script that leaked about a year or 2 ago. You can see in those scripts that, the promos, when they go out there, they're almost word for word what's written for them. And, there's very few guys that go out there and just come up with their own stuff. I think the top guys will have bullet points, but guys like the Shield that, aren't really all that established on the mic yet, especially guys like Roman Reigns, he's given a lot of his material. The delivery was great. I mean, they delivered the lines really well, and, that's ultimately what counts. But I would like to see them have a little bit more creative freedom with their promos and let them do their own thing. I think that a lot of Bray Wyatt's success is because he's able to come up with his own material and write out his own promos. But, I'm thinking that in the future it would be nice to see these guys have a little bit more creative freedom and not completely reading from a script. But, WWE, as a business, and when it comes to running a TV show, they want to have as much control as possible, and everything's very well planned out. Every segment, the timing, the promos, everything. Every week they really put it together and put a lot of process into it, and just making it as organized as possible. All right, this one comes from Talk to Me Really. Hey Aaron, nice videos. Please answer in video. Do you see MVP having a heel run in TNA in the near future? Anything's possible. Considering the fact that it is TNA, it would not surprise me to see him make a swerve heel turn and become a bad guy and become the heel authority figure. Would not surprise me at all, and I'm almost expecting it to happen at some point. It's just very typical of TNA, where you have a guy as a babyface for a while, and then he screws over the babyface and goes heel, and then you have a heel faction. I'm sure MVP, if he turns heel, he'll have his own group, and it'll be the same storyline that TNA's done over and over and over again. So if I had to make a prediction, I would say, yeah, he will turn heel at some point. All right, this one comes from Mikey the Movies. Hey Aaron, what do you think about the WCW matches on Nitro with Bret Hart versus Hogan, Bret Hart versus Sting? Were these matches wasted on free TV when they could have drawn for pay-per-views? Absolutely. That was problem number 437 with WCW, giving away these marquee matches for free on television. At first, when the concept of Nitro started, the idea of star versus star was unique. It was innovative. It was something that hadn't been done, and it helped put WCW ahead of WWE in the ratings. But at the same time, it was bad for the pay-per-view business, because you were essentially telling fans that Nitro was just as important, if not more important, than the pay-per-view. So why spend money on the pay-per-view when you can see these main event matches for free on television? So it was bad in the long run. In the short term, when it came down to the Monday night, that particular Monday night when you were up against WWE, you wanted to have the biggest card possible on Nitro to win the ratings war. But then at the end of the day, your pay-per-view suffered. And it definitely got worse in WCW as time went on, doing these matches. It's fine doing a star versus star match, but a match at the magnitude of Bret Hart versus Hulk Hogan, no way that should have been on free television. And same thing with Bret Hart versus Sting. Those absolutely should have been pay-per-view main events. And, Hogan and Goldberg, I think, was another match that, as cool as it was to have it at the Georgia Dome on Nitro, and as hot as that crowd was and how big of a moment that was, you essentially blew millions of dollars by not putting that match on pay-per-view, in my opinion. All right, final question here from Mega Drive 144. Hello, Aaron. What did you think about the face turn of Bully Ray? I personally dislike it. It feels wrong. Well, yeah, I mean, a guy called Bully Ray being a babyface doesn't really make much sense, but him turning heel and joining Aces and Eights when he had been feuding with them for 6 months, that didn't make sense either. So at this point, I really don't care what role he plays. It doesn't matter to me if he's a babyface or a heel. 5 years ago, if he had been a successful heel for several years and he went babyface, I would say, maybe this isn't the best idea. But at this point, I really don't care. I mean, I'm so indifferent to Bully Ray being a face or a heel. I just say whatever. And, he's fine as a babyface, but, the name, I think, is what bothers people. A guy called Bully is a babyface. I mean, it just goes against your basic logic. So maybe he could just go back to being Brother Ray, or change his name or do something. I don't know if that would make people happy, but at this point, I really don't care one way or another. All right, that'll do it for this edition of No DQ&A video. Thanks as always for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, please share it on Facebook and Twitter. Tell a friend about No DQ&A video, and I will see you guys next time for more. Thanks for watching.